What if I told you there's a hidden story in history, one of unshakable faith, daring rebellion, and miraculous intervention, that was once celebrated by believers across the world, but now it's been buried, stripped from the pages of most Bibles? The books of the Maccabees hold the key to a heroic resistance against oppression, and a miracle so profound it gave birth to a celebration still honored today, Hanukkah. Yet, these books were declared too dangerous, too divisive, and ultimately banned from mainstream Christian teachings. What if these stories contain lessons that could inspire us to stand firm in our faith today? What if they hold answers to questions we haven't even thought to ask, about courage, divine justice, and the fight to protect what's sacred? In today's video, we're diving into the forbidden knowledge of the Maccabees, exploring why these books were cast aside, and uncovering the truths that some might not want you to know. Are you ready to challenge what you thought you knew? Let's begin. In the midst of a world teetering on the edge of spiritual collapse, where sacred traditions were outlawed and faith itself became a crime, there rose a story of defiance and divine power so compelling, it inspired generations of believers. The books of the Maccabees, part of what we now call the Apocrypha, capture this breathtaking saga. Set in the 2nd century BCE, during the reign of the tyrannical Seleucid Empire, these books tell of Jewish resistance led by a family whose faith burned brighter than the oppression they faced. A family who chose to stand for God when their very survival was on the line. Once considered vital to understanding God's justice and the resilience of His people, these books were a cornerstone of Jewish and early Christian faith. They recount the miraculous events leading to the rededication of the temple, a miracle still celebrated today as Hanukkah. And yet these very texts, revered for centuries, were eventually cast aside, excluded from most Protestant Bibles. Why? What secrets do they hold about standing firm in faith when the world demands compromise? Why would a story so rich in divine justice and miraculous intervention be erased from mainstream Christian teachings? Today we're not just exploring history, we're uncovering the lessons these texts still hold for us. Lessons about courage, devotion, and the miraculous power of God to intervene in the darkest moments of human history. But more importantly, we'll answer the burning question: why were these books removed? And what does their absence mean for us as believers? Get ready to dive into a story that defied empires, rekindled faith, and continues to challenge our understanding of God's plan. Let's uncover the forbidden knowledge of the Maccabees together. Imagine a world where worshiping God meant risking your life, a world where the sacred temple, the very heart of your faith, was defiled by pagan idols. This was the reality for the Jewish people under the rule of the Seleucid king Antiochus IV, a tyrant who sought to erase their beliefs and replace them with his own. Antiochus desecrated the holy temple, sacrificing unclean animals on the altar and outlawing Jewish practices like circumcision and observing the Sabbath. Faith was forbidden, and the price of loyalty to God was death. Yet, in the face of overwhelming oppression, a spark of rebellion ignited. A spark that would grow into a flame of divine resistance. This is where Judah Maccabee enters the story. Known as the Hammer, Judah was not a king or a high priest, but a man of unshakable faith and courage. Leading a small band of guerrilla fighters, Judah defied an empire. Against all odds, they reclaimed the temple, purifying it in an act of holy defiance. A moment immortalized in the miracle of Hanukkah, when a single day's supply of oil burned for 8 days. But this isn't just history, it's a story of faith triumphing over tyranny, of God's people standing firm against the forces of darkness. And yet, despite its powerful message, the story of the Maccabees has been hidden from most Bibles. Why were they banned? The books of the Maccabees were once celebrated as sacred texts, so why were they cast aside? To answer this, we must journey to the Protestant Reformation, a time of great upheaval in the Christian world. During this period, many Protestant leaders chose to exclude the Maccabees from their biblical canon, arguing that they were not part of the original Hebrew scriptures. But was that the only reason? Or was there something more controversial at play? The Maccabees tell a story of national resistance, of God's intervention in human history. For some, these themes were too Jewish, emphasizing a cultural identity that didn't align with the universal message of Christianity. Others found the miraculous events like the oil that burned for 8 days difficult to reconcile with their theological priorities. Could it be that the Maccabees' call to stand firm in faith, even to the point of death, was seen as too radical, too challenging? These are questions that linger, inviting us to dig deeper into the truths these books reveal. The books of the Maccabees are more than just historical records. They're a blueprint for faith under fire, filled with stories that inspire and convict. Faith under fire. Perhaps the most heart-wrenching tale is that of the mother and her 7 sons, 2 Maccabees 7. Faced with torture and death, they refused to break God's laws. One by one, they died, proclaiming their faith, knowing that their sacrifice would not be in vain. Their courage echoes through time, challenging us to ask, would we be so bold? Divine intervention. The miracle of Hanukkah is a testament to God's faithfulness. When the Maccabees purified the temple, they found only 1 day's worth of oil to light the menorah. But God provided, making the oil last 8 days, a sign that He honors those who honor Him. Courage and leadership. Judah Maccabee's unwavering faith and strategic brilliance turned the tide of history. His story reminds us that even the smallest, most underestimated forces can overcome empires when they stand with God. These lessons are not just for the past. They resonate today, in a world where faith is often tested and values are under siege. What are we missing today? What if the story of the Maccabees holds the key to navigating the trials of our own time? Their unwavering commitment to God's laws, even under threat, offers us a powerful example of how to live in a world that often challenges faith. The Maccabees remind us that traditions are not just rituals. They're acts of resistance against forgetting who we are. In a secular world, how can we protect what's sacred? Standing firm. Their courage calls us to examine our own faith. Do we have the strength to stand firm in God's truth no matter the cost? The story of the Maccabees reminds us that God is always at work, even in the darkest times. Their victory was not just theirs, it was His. What other lessons might we uncover if we dare to revisit these forgotten texts? How might their story inspire us to stand boldly in our own faith? Which part of the Maccabees story resonates most with you? Share your thoughts in the comments. The books of the Maccabees are more than ancient texts. They're a divine mirror, reflecting the unshakable power of faith, the strength of courage, and the undeniable presence of God's hand in our lives. These stories don't just belong to history. They belong to us today, in a world that challenges our beliefs at every turn. Lesson in faithful defiance. Imagine standing in the shadow of oppression, where practicing your faith could cost you your life. The Maccabees refused to compromise their devotion to God, even as their enemies desecrated the Holy Temple and outlawed God's commandments. Their courage wasn't born from fearlessness. It was born from faith. A faith so strong that even the threat of death couldn't extinguish it. Would we have that kind of faith? Could we stand firm when the world says, bow down to something else? Think of the mother in 2 Maccabees 7, watching her 7 sons martyred before her eyes, yet proclaiming unwavering trust in God's promise. Her words echo across centuries, reminding us that our faith must not waver, even in the darkest moments. What the Apostle Paul teaches us as he serves as a Christ for his fellow men. Today we might not face armies or decrees banning our worship, but we do face a culture that challenges the foundation of our faith. The Maccabees remind us that courage isn't just about picking up a sword, it's about standing boldly for truth, even when it's inconvenient or unpopular. How often do we hide our beliefs to avoid conflict? What would happen if we stood firm like the Maccabees, unafraid, unashamed? Their courage isn't just a tale to admire, it's a challenge to each of us, whether it's resisting temptation, speaking up for what's right, or defending the sacredness of our beliefs. We are called to be modern warriors of faith. The miracles we forget. Then there's the miracle of Hanukkah, the oil that lasted 8 days when there was only enough for one. That miracle wasn't just a moment in history, it was a divine message. When you trust in me, I will provide. What if miracles like these still happen, but we're too distracted to see them? This story reminds us that even when the odds seem insurmountable, God's provision is never out of reach. The light of the menorah symbolizes His eternal presence, a light that cannot be extinguished, no matter how dark the world becomes. Are we willing to fight for our faith, not with swords, but with prayers, convictions, and love? And we stand firm in a world that demands compromise. Will we trust in God's miracles even when they seem impossible? These are not questions for the Maccabees alone. They are for us, here and now. What will your answer be? The story of the Maccabees is more than ancient history. It's a call to courage, faith, and unwavering trust in God's power. It's a testament to standing firm in the face of oppression, and it reminds us that miracles happen when we put our faith in Him. But here's the question: why have these powerful stories been hidden from most of us? What does this say about how we view Scripture today? Now it's your turn to join the conversation. What do you think about the books of the Maccabees? Should they be more widely studied in Christian teachings? Do their lessons resonate with the challenges we face in our own spiritual lives today? Let's hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and share your perspective. Your voice matters, and it could inspire someone else watching this video to dig deeper into their faith. And don't stop here. If you found value in today's video, help spread the word. Hit that like button to show your support. Subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into forgotten and forbidden texts, and share this video with someone who needs to hear these stories.